everyone, and welcome to this episode, the innovation one of the Women Talking About Learning podcast. As you may know, innovation is a pet subject of mine, so when this week's guests agreed to record, I was keen to see how they approached it. Our first guest is Caroline Bennett-Jarvis. Caroline has over 20 years' experience as a human resource development practitioner. She's a committed humanitarian and an avid lifelong learner, currently managing and producing digital educational content for the US market. Originally from England, Caroline initially was formally educated in contemporary art, design and craft, where she's been able to transcend her critical, innovative thinking abilities into the corporate world in Barbados, which has been her home for the last 22 years. Her career path in L&D has been more vocational, experiential, despite recently achieving an MSc in Leadership and Human Resource Management, accompanied with a dual CMI certification in Strategic Leadership and Management. Our second guest is Egle Vinauskaite. Egle is a learning consultant who helps household brands and innovative edtech startups to create evidence-based, impactful digital learning solutions. She's worked with brands as diverse as Facebook, HSBC, Santander and ACCA, as well as some of the most exciting startups and creative agencies around. She's also director of Skillbright Labs. That's a boutique edtech product development consultancy, and she was a Rising Star Award winner in the LPI's Learning Awards in 2020. Caroline and Egle kept me busy with links in this episode. All those links, and Caroline and Egle's contact details, are in the show notes. This is Women Talking About Learning. This is Caroline and Egle talking about innovation.
Hi, Egle. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you so much for being my partner in crime to join forces together. I'm Caroline, so just to clear that up from the get-go. So I'll just give sort of an overview of myself, and then I'll hand the floor over to you, Egle. How does that sound?
Yeah, sure, sounds good.
Wonderful. So a little bit about me. Well, I kind of followed this kind of unconventional experiential route because I'm formally trained in contemporary art and design and craft, but I've actually found that has shaped a lot of the way that I think. It's been a fantastic experience to begin with. And although I've acquired a master's in leadership and human resource management, which is usually part of the traditional route, and currently pursuing CIPD, that was fairly recent. So never a part of, the beginning or part of my beginning in the corporate L&D space. So as part of my journey, L&D has become my second passion. And delivered a lot of training courses. I just want to share you my very first experience of getting into L&D.
Yeah.
One joyful evening, the company that I was working with had an introductory class, and I was more on the business side of things, just making sure that we were bringing people on board for the training and so on. And asked the question, who's training the class? Silence, then somebody says, you are. And I'm like, okay. So when did this happen? So without hesitation, well, kind of, I sort of, okay, I went into the room, and then there was all these faces looking at me in anticipation to get started. So that was kind of my entree to learning and development, and the rest was history. So I think that, I guess that's my take in a nutshell, but it has opened a lot of doors, especially with problem solving, and from there I've become more involved in sort of digital education, ideation, and it's taken me somewhere else in terms of e-learning and instructional design and all that fun stuff. So that's me. So how about you, Egle? What's your story?
Wow, yours was quite a journey. So I'm a learning product strategist. My background is in adult development and behavioral science, and I work with companies on their internal learning solutions, both digital and blended, and with edtech startups, helping them shape their offering that they're bringing to the market. So my work spans both corporate L&D and the vast learning that's happening outside of it. And what I really liked about your background is that it's very rich. Like you had a few pivots in your career, and so for me, innovation, just going back to the topic, is that for me, innovation starts with an idea. An idea is just a new combination of old elements, and if we accept that as a premise, it means that an innovation is an idea that has been transformed into practical reality. So the more experiences you have, like yourself, the more of these elements you have to work with. So your history from art to L&D seems like a great breeding ground for innovation. So I was wondering, so what is innovation for you, and how do you do it in your work? I'm really intrigued by how all of your experiences and interests come together.
Yeah, I think it's happened organically, really. I've always been an ideas person, and it's not just the art side of things. I know that the typical perception would be doing something creative like art and design, and yes, it has played a part. But I think that, you know, being part of this podcast has inspired me to even reflect of, you know, in a way, as how innovation has impacted me through that journey. You know, because it's all about creating a product or a service that adds that value, and it's something that actually gets me very excited. And, you know, there's things all around that kind of feeds into that, and it also helps me to problem solve, you know, think of unique ways of fixing something. Sometimes it's straightforward, but not always. And when there is a problem, it brings out that sort of unique thought process in me. And learning is part of problem solving. Once it's considered a learning and development or training issue, per se, it's definitely something that is important in terms of being able to think smartly, to come up with new techniques or ideas or methodologies. And again, it's sort of, once you're around people that share the same values and the same ideas, or same, well, not ideas, but beliefs, and has that passion and that spark, I think that it's really necessary and important in that regard. So I think that for me, it tends to happen a lot by accident. You know, once I'm relaxed, I'm, you know, thinking, it just kind of, things spring up. Sometimes something will happen and I have to think about it, and then I can come back with something that is unique, that can sometimes just make the learning experience so much more impactful and exciting and meaningful.
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree with you. Yeah, and this is again one of the reasons why I was also inspired to to think about innovation and to talk about innovation. That especially after our conversation that we had before this, is again very similar reflections on my end. And yeah, for me, thinking about my own work and what I'm doing in this field is like this realization that learning design is slowly but surely morphing with UX, with content strategy, with marketing, which produces many avenues for innovation. And that's just a start. There are very many disciplines for sure. And that these disciplines, they have already figured out answers to many problems that L&D is facing. So for example, people don't like what you're offering, then use agile product development. They already know, they have this process down. They know how to create something useful. So, you know, ask your users and iterate. People do the assigned learning, but don't change their behavior one bit. Well, you're probably not addressing the blockers to their behavior. So behavioral science has already frameworks to do that. You just have to follow them and affect the behavior and trigger action. You want people to understand something, to get something, to change the way they feel about something. Look at marketing, look at communication. They have been doing that for decades. I mean, what you might need is a comms campaign, and not a course or a structured training experience in the broad sense. And all of these things become quite clear once you venture outside of corporate L&D into the wild and have to think about how people are going to find you or your solution, how they're going to finally take the leap and engage, how you're going to get them to come back, because there's a very real exchange of time and value happening here. And this is not something that corporate L&D solutions have to worry about often, but think about how much better they would be if they did. So that's, for me, that's innovation in L&D, and that's why we have to talk about it, because it's about taking existing ideas from different disciplines and applying them to our own ends.
Absolutely, totally agree, Egle. And that also brings me to my point. I know we talked about it very briefly before, and it excites me to even touch on it again. But as we talk about the corporate L&D side of things, and just companies in general, or organizations in general, I think that innovation is impactful when you have that innovation leadership that has a vision, that can kind of drive things, and again, have people around that leader to embrace that. So a part of that, which I would say probably hinders innovation, is, or not, I'm just kind of backtracking here a little bit, is the concept of learning. You know, the idea of you fail, but you don't see it as a weakness, but you see it as a strength to go forward, to rethink, to reconfigure.
I want to make learning, the term learning
yes. So you're learning through failing. So, you know, it's good stuff. It's something that, you know, we should definitely take that on, bring that on board. I mean, my son, because I actually learn from my children quite a bit. They keep me current, and they've even fed into some of the ideas that I've had when I've had to deliver training one way or the other. But there was something that he cited from a hip hop track. Has to be hip hop, right? So, and it's like, there's no mistakes in life, only lessons. So even though it's a very simple, you know, in hip hop, it tends to be very, how do I put it, very colorful and maybe explicit at times. There are some people, some artists that are very, what we call the conscience artists, that come up with some very meaningful phrases. And I think that it's something that is so, it could relate to many things, but I definitely can connect that with innovation and design thinking, and, you know, coming up with, you know, maybe having some bad, you know, ideas, or and being able to thrash them out and test them, and, you know, okay, it didn't work, but based on the outcome, you can be able to change it up, or think of something else, or do something that it evolves into making that breakthrough, whether it's through any kind of learning in innovative concept or otherwise. So I think it's good to kind of not feel that you're going to fall to pieces because you did something wrong, but you say, okay, well, it didn't work, why? It's just so simplistic, but it can be so impactful in that respect. So learning is with me to stay, not to say that I would deliberately go out to fail. I've been very bad, bold and brave when it comes to trying new things. That's really me in a nutshell. What are your thoughts there, Egle?
Yeah, I mean, so I really like the point that you're making and how you're bringing the personal angle to innovation, because obviously we talk a lot about corporate innovation and creating new products and improving processes for businesses to create value. But at the same time, there's this very strong personal element, because I do believe that business innovation cannot be separated from personal one, because you can only create when you experience things. And whether, as you said, you know, if there are some experiences from music, from your interests, or whatever experiences you try and fail, all of it comes together and helps you think. And this is something that I've come to realize quite starkly in the last month in comparison to the last year, really the entire 2020, is that to be able to think creatively, I think you need to make these connections that lead to innovations. And for that to happen, you need to experience things. So for example, meeting people, especially new people. You know, people sometimes approach me on LinkedIn for a chat, and I do like having these chats, because after them, I just come out of them buzzing with ideas. You know, have a conversation at 11 a.m. I'm making lunch at at 12, and I have to stop mixing the sauce because I have to start taking notes because I have all of these different thoughts coming through my head. So that's where the so-called diffuse thinking kicks in. And I guess that's because conversations with strangers make you mull over your knowledge and experience and explain things to someone who has a different level of understanding. And this is where light bulbs happen. Like another avenue that I can think of is, again, working with people who have a deep expertise in something. And this is not something that happens very often in L&D, because many L&D professionals are generalists. And even if you have a specialism, such as, say, animation or marketing, you often have that within L&D. So when you do get to work with someone who has a very deep expertise in an area, you can see how they approach the same problem from a completely different angle, and they just make you snap out of your mental block and just out of your old thinking. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And thinking of
not being stuck in a rut.
Exactly. And I was just reflecting on how to make, so the idea is that for you to make business innovation happen, you need to enable yourself, to put yourself in situations where you have enough of these building blocks to be innovative, to enable yourself to be innovative. And yeah, as you said, just random connections with strangers, working with people with deep expertise, but then thinking about like reading books or articles, listening to podcasts. So as long as you do it thoughtfully and not consume that information like fast food, it can really enrich your thinking. But that means stopping thinking about how this information relates to what you already know, maybe how it challenges your knowledge, what you can take away from it. So I can completely, on reflection, I can totally see how the quality of my ideas is reflected in, for example, when I'm working too hard, not take any breaks, no deliberate breaks to read and to consume what's out there. And yeah, and finally being present in your everyday experiences. Again, your example with your son, where it's about actually not just consuming the experiences that come at you for your interests or professional endeavors or whatever. It's about being present. So for example, you're learning something new, then stop and think about how that makes you feel. Are you afraid? Are you excited? How are you overcoming that? Because you're going to be able to use that in your work as an L&D professional to help your learners. The same applies to even more mundane things. So you clicked on an article and found yourself in a rabbit hole. So what made you click? What made you continue reading? What made you explore? All of these things, they are useful. They are useful building blocks for innovation L&D. And yeah, and these good ideas eventually result in something really useful. So that's my
Absolutely.
very, very long response to what is innovation L&D.
No, not at all. I think it's all good. You know, I mean, it's great. I can totally relate to that. I mean, I get ideas when I'm relaxed. I get ideas when I am not too hot, I'm not too cold, I'm not stressed, I'm not hungry. All of those things allow me to center and ground. And even when I have a problem that I'm trying to solve, or I'm trying to come up with a new idea to make a process better, or I just want to try something new, and I just want to experiment a little bit. Those all happen when I'm sort of in that train of thought, really. And then, you know, I grab and, you know, of course I will read. I could do other things, and I get so far in a book, I stop, and then I have to make a note because I've thought of something. And then I go back and read, and then another idea comes up, and then I've got back and make a note again. So it's quite interesting. So it's a interesting sort of path that I take when I come up with ideas as a learning professional. And even on the other side of things that I do, I'm vice chair of a charity called Advocates Against Domestic Abuse, and evolved over the years where we're trying to send that message across to alleviate domestic violence in the wider society in Barbados. And, you know, we're having to come up with concepts that go beyond panel discussion, or, you know, with the psychologist and the social worker and the legal person, you know, which tends to be done time and time again every year. We're coming up with some, you know, other ideas that will be able to send the message, but in a unique way. So, you know, some of the things that we've done is we had a competition called Spoken Word. So again, the arts come into play, which is cool. I did notice that there had been a heightened interest using that same concept of, you know, through, you know, spoken word, whether it's, you know, the hip hop rap, or I'm saying that as though I'm 100, but anyway, hip hop, the poetry or storytelling or something of that ilk that, you know, will involve the community in terms of putting across their interpretation and their thoughts and expression on the topic, and being able to share that with, you know, not even just the wider community in Barbados, but globally, to send that message and to make that impact. So I think that that's a great example of how we've been able to become innovative as a charity to deliver that message. And at the moment, we're coming up with some other concepts. So it's getting increasingly exciting. So it's again feeding in professionally, but even from a personal standpoint. And I, you know, as you mentioned, Egle, how it kind of, I guess it becomes almost like organic. It kind of feeds its way in and happens quite intrinsically. So I think that is, you know, something that, as I say, it makes me tick. And the world's our oyster, because even when I have an idea, or the organization has an idea, everybody else chimes in with their ideas as well, and we get to brainstorm, and I absolutely enjoy that.
Yeah, and I think it's quite important to lean into that process, to let that process happen, this ideation in your head where you're sort of it seems like your mind is trying out various combinations to come up with a new solution. So you're just not trying to get distracted, you know, check LinkedIn or watch Netflix, but actually leaning into that, maybe going for a walk and letting it all sort of become for it to take shape. It's actually, there's this pretty cool book by James Webb Young. It's called The Technique for Producing Ideas. And it talks exactly about that, how at first you need to deeply understand various subject matters and facets of the problem that you're solving. And then it's exactly that. It's letting your brilliant mind do the rest of the job and seeing what happens.
Cool. Not that there's anything wrong with watching Netflix. Things happen.
No, I'm not judging. I'm not judging. Yeah, after the last year, none of us can judge. Yeah, and another thing that sort of thread from what you just told about your work, and especially the charity case, is that it seems that innovation doesn't have to be something huge. It can be a process improvement, and it can be a smaller way of doing things differently. And I kind of feel that a lot of people may even acquire some sort of identity that, you know, I'm not a creative, I'm not an innovative person, but just because this idea of if I am an innovator, that means I have to invent something huge. And I think it's quite assuring to know that it's innovation is a very grassroots process. It's these smaller things that have a big effect in practice.
Based on that, why do you think companies tend to get hindered or have a fear of innovation? What do you think are some of those pitfalls that maybe you've seen faced, or maybe heard about? What are your thoughts there?
Oh yeah, I have a few.
Ooh, tell me more.
Yeah, so one is obviously like the usual one, not the obvious one, is culturally. Well, when you talk about learning, it's all good and great, but the culture and needs to allow that your professional standing in your organization, your status cannot be damaged from you trying things out and failing. So I think that's an important one. Another one is what I call the shiny tech fallacy, this bias towards deploying innovative tech without deeply understanding its use case. So exactly what problem is going to solve for you and what else needs to be in place for it to be successful. And it's I would say fake innovation. So you asked me why it's not happening. I think this is sort of the innovation that is happening a lot, but it's not producing maybe the impact that people are expecting.
Right.
Yeah.
What's an example of fake innovation?
So I'm thinking it's okay. It's not. Okay. Yeah, one can call it an innovation theater. So it's off the top. For example, social learning, right? It's actually a good concept, really powerful when done right. But if you just get a tool which gives you the capability to foster social learning, meaning a space, an online space for people to come together and share ideas, maybe a chat, maybe some forum type thing, whatnot. And then you think that, okay, so now I'm going to do social learning. Technically, the tool may not be bad, but you need to start thinking, okay, is the lack of this tool the reason why people are not sharing their learning or not learning collaboratively? Okay, so if there is this tool, why people would go and use that tool instead of, say, Teams or Slack that we are currently using at our organization?
Right.
If they actually get onto that tool, who's going to manage the community? Who's going to manage these conversations? It's not that learning, like the community that needs to be in place for people to actually engage isn't going to happen by itself, because with these kind of things, a person visits, uses a tool and like that. And if on their first try, it looks like a desert, you can see tumbleweed, they're not going to come back. So there needs to be the strategy. Okay, so how do people find it? How do they use it? How do we foster that? How do they come back? So that's what I mean by fake innovation or innovation theater.
Right.
That's sort of like, it ticks the box that yeah, it is innovative, but it doesn't, like, innovation needs to be useful. It needs to be practical.
It's
that
not just
by definition.
a novelty. Yeah, because
Exactly.
even as you mentioned that, I'm also thinking about the hype that goes with it. You know, it seems to be a cool thing these days. So when you think about innovation, you know, yes, we think of the tech companies, the Silicon Valley phenomenon of people bringing in some form of innovation, and yes, it's happened, but I think that there is more of a propensity to copy, you know, maybe do a slight tweak here and there, or work with what has worked or is working, rather than taking that leap of faith and then just doing something that is unique but does add that value. But you know, there is that worry, and again back to fear again of, okay, if it goes wrong, and I guess it touches on learning, well, how is it going to affect our bottom line? You know, how is it going to affect productivity or performance? And you know, it's working for the Googles of this world, or it's working for, you know, so let's go with that, or let's stick with the status quo, you know, that has worked. So I think that there is that, you know, we want to look hip and cool, but at the same time, and maybe in the background, we really? we're just putting on this front to kind of appear that way, but we're really maybe sticking to, not to say there's anything wrong with it, but I think it can hinder progress in a way, but we're sticking to traditionalist ideas or ideology that we know is a done deal and we don't have to worry about so much. So people sort of have maybe like a set perception of what innovation is, or maybe again isn't. I don't know. I think to define it is somewhat subjective, but yeah, hype is probably what sticks into the forefront of my mind when it comes to companies, and the fact that they may even, it's also centered around the people within the organization that can drive that innovation. Sometimes people might have ideas, but they may hit a brick wall because, you know, others are not supportive, you know, and then that person probably feels stifled, or group of people might feel stifled in a way that they cannot express that. So I don't, you know, I realize that, you know, it can be, but, you know, you have companies like, I think it's WD-40, where, you know, the CEO of that company has been able to gain tangible results because, you know, he's been able to give them that freedom and that creative license to try new things and to embrace, you know, those ideas that bring on innovation. And if they fail, you know, they're not going to be hammered. What did you do?
Yeah, I actually had an interesting conversation with someone this weekend, and they work in a highly innovative technical field. And so in their organization, the organization is deliberately designed so that people from different disciplines bump into each other. So I think that's another probably overlooked strategy that companies can employ. Just that don't departmentalize your teams. Let the magic happen. Just get them together. Let the magic happen. Yeah. Just the last thing I wanted to say on speaking about what are the other reasons why it may not be happening in organizations is that lack of humility. So thinking that I know something that I don't need, something so well that I don't need input from anyone else. And you may not even notice yourself doing it. It's just naturally, oh, I'm an expert. I'll like, this is within my area of expertise. I'll do it. And at other times, you mistake your perspective for a fact. So this is quite common in L&D when people want to skip user research because they know what their staff's problems are and how to solve them. So like, generally speaking, it's very likely that you don't, or at least not fully. And unless you do, you won't be able to channel your ideas in a useful way. And you may, again, going back full circle to fake innovation, that may produce exactly that.
Absolutely. And I think you definitely have to have an open mind, that we don't know it all. As much as we want to be a know-it-all, we don't know it all. And just be open to what everyone else is looking to contribute. I think that helps to make the world go round somewhat. And, you know, thrash out those, you know, the ideas and the input that has been given to those persons around you, because I think it makes things more colourful and more interesting and more exciting, and that ability to explore even more things that eventually will, you know, the idea would add that value or be able to create something that, as you'd mentioned, that's magical, being able to break that barrier to going forward to progress. Just a quick question, because I know Andrew is kind of poking at this, and I'm not really sure how well I could answer this, but do you think that innovation is a gender issue at all?
Oh, I wish I didn't ask that.
I don't know.
No, it's such a loaded question that I'm sure that whichever way I answer right now, I'm gonna just mull over it because there are so many facets in terms of innovation and gender. One obvious one is the fact that not just gender, but any kind of group can bring their different experiences. Diverse group, diversity of thought, diversity of experiences, whatever they bring to the table. That is always there are so many anecdotes about how it would have taken just one person from a different background to point out that, you know, you should probably not do that Pepsi commercial. So yeah, that's the like, pretty much I'm stating the obvious. Now in terms of if it's
getting ticklish now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying not to say something that I know that I will argue myself out of, because definitely after this recording, I'm going to podcast walk and I'm going to be mulling over this question for a long time.
You're going to get backlash.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yes.
Do you think innovation is a gendered issue?
To me, it doesn't strike me as one. But that's probably just me. I just kind of see it as being from either or, it's unique to that person, regardless of what gender they are or what nationality or diverse group that they are. I think that maybe in certain areas, say, for example, the tech side of things, it tends to be somewhat male dominated, but that's probably because of what we hear about. It's, what do we not hear about? Do you have a female population out there doing fantastic things, probably better than what is out there that we know of? So that's really my take in a nutshell. I won't go too far because I might get in trouble like you. So oops.
And maybe if not in a better way, then at least in a way that is unique and serves a different segment and brings a completely different value proposition to the table. So it's I think it's a win. It's a win in terms of innovation. The more diversity, the better. So we need to wrap up this journey over the last half hour. I don't know where it's taken me. What would be the summary from you?
I guess in some ways I'm just constantly thinking about what innovation is, what it means, even though I think it will always continually evolve, and I think that it is a very personal thing. So it could mean different things. To me, it's about trying to move forward and transformation and that continual progression, whether it's in life in general or whether it's professionally or otherwise. And if it stands still, then, or stagnant, it just no longer is innovation in my eyes, in my head. And to me, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. But it's not a straight path, it's not a direct, black and white. It can be somewhat of a winding road until you make that breakthrough, and then even then it doesn't stop. It continues because it's evolving. It's still turning into something else, magical, exciting, and I think that's really my that's my way of summing it up. How about you, Egle?
Yeah, I guess my key takeaway from having thought about it for a few days now and following this conversation is that innovation starts with a person, and it's important to put yourself in situations that enable you to be innovative and to think in an innovative way. So that would be my parting thought.
Nice.
Yeah. So
it's been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Caroline, for this lovely conversation. Again, I'm sure I'm gonna be sitting on a few things that we discussed for a few days now. So yeah, it's been great.
Likewise, and I'm like to kind of okay, this is what else I could have talked about, or these are other things I can do, and maybe have a look at that book that you've just held up there or shown. I was like, oh, I need to read that. But yeah, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much, Egle.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I'm always surprised when we record, and there's lots of reasons why I get surprised. This one was because innovation was discussed in a more personal and people-centred way than I'd expected or anticipated. Massive thanks to Caroline and Egle for their contribution and their time. It is, as always, greatly appreciated. We've revised the topics that people have requested, and there are new topics that you might want to look at that are now on our website. We're going to be recording more in the next few weeks, so if you do want to be involved, then please do get in touch. And that includes 2 special episodes. We're going to be recording one episode face-to-face in a few weeks, and if you're in London or in South Essex, please do let us know, and we might have a space for you. Our other special episode is going to be the men one, where we'll be asking men to tell us what they think about women talking about learning, and we'll have more details of that in the next few weeks. All of our contact details are on our website, womentalkingaboutlearning.com, or again in the show notes. As always, thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.